Hi everyone, my name is Aida Bilajbegovic and I am your host of today. Warm welcome to everyone. I also would like to introduce the tech host of today, that's Marie. Marie is here to support us if we have any technical issues. I once again would like to give all the panelists and all the participants a warm welcome. And before we start with the program of today, I would like to do a quick technical check. First of all, I would like to ask everyone to let me know in the chat if you can hear me well and if you can see me good. Let's do a quick check. I already see a yes. Great. The second thing I would like to ask you to answer in chat is from which country you are listening in today. So please let me know in chat from which country you're listening in. I see Netherlands a lot. Shout out to people in the UK, Kenya, Argentina. Great. This is working very well. Warm welcome to all of you once again. So I would like to briefly explain the two different functionalities we have today. We have the chat that you all just used, and we would like to use this chat option for general comments and also to signal to our tech host, Marie, in case you experience any technical issues. Then we also have another option to use, and that's the Q&A. You can see this on the bottom of your screen. Next to the chat, you see Q&A. And we really would like to invite all participants to ask questions to the panelists. We have a very interesting program today with a lot of inspiring speakers that have a lot of interesting information to share. So to make this session as fun and interactive as possible, we really encourage everyone to use this Q&A option. And I will promise that we will do our best to answer all the questions in the Q&A today. But if that doesn't work, we will come back to this later. And this is also an invitation to all the panelists of today. You're also very much invited to ask each other questions. You can also do that via the Q&A, or as panelists, you can also raise your hand. The final thing that I would like to share with you is that we are also recording this session today, but the only people that are visible on this recording are the panelists and myself. And this recording will later will be used for communication purposes. Now, the reason that we are all here today is because it's a very special day today. Today is the launch of the State of the World Population Report 2021. And this report is published by UNFPA. UNFPA is the United Nations Population Fund, and they launch this report every year. And every year there's a different theme. And this report is on the development and the trends in the world's demographics and population. And the theme of this year specifically is on bodily autonomy. And more specifically, the title of the report today is "My Body is My Own, Claiming the Right to Autonomy and Self-Determination." So what we will do today, we invited several speakers to talk about this report specifically and to talk a bit more about what this report means in relation to their work. And I would like to invite the first speaker. And the first speaker of today is Arthur Erken. And Arthur is the director of the Policy and Strategy Division at UNFPA. He is based at the headquarters of UNFPA in New York. Arthur, welcome.
Thank you, Aida.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Arthur.
No, it's really a pleasure for me to be here at the launch of our State of the World Population Report. It's always a special moment for us, so I'm really happy to be able to join. Somewhere today, at this moment actually, an adolescent girl is expecting to undergo a rite of passage, forever to be wounded by female genital mutilation. Somewhere today, at this very moment, a girl is married off, one of more than 30,000 girls who are told to get dressed because today will be her wedding day. Somewhere today, at this moment, a woman enters her village clinic, health clinic, to seek contraception, only to be told that there will be no prescription without her husband's consent. All around the world, women and girls are not in control over their bodies and their lives. Women have a right to make their own decisions about their bodies. In fact, bodily autonomy, or the right to own your body, is the foundation for the enjoyment of all human rights, including the right to sexual and reproductive health and the right to live free from violence. Yet, how many women can actually claim that they have the power to exercise that right? The new UNFPA State of World Population report, My Body is My Own, shows that in countries where we have data, nearly half of women lack the power to make their own decisions about whether to have or not to have sex with their partner, about whether to use or not to use contraception, about whether to see a doctor. Often these decisions are made or influenced by others, whether it's partners, families, societies, or even the government. The right to the autonomy of our bodies means that we must have the power and agency to make choices without fear of violence or having someone else to decide for us. Intertwined with that right is bodily integrity, where people live free from physical acts to which they do not consent. For many people, but especially women and girls, life is fraught with violations to their bodily autonomy and integrity. We see this when a lack of contraceptive choices leads to unplanned pregnancy. We see this in the terrible bargain made to exchange unwanted sex for a home or food. We see this in life-derailing practices such as female genital mutilation and child marriage. But also autonomy is violated when people with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities cannot walk down the street without fearing assault or humiliation. Or when people with disabilities are stripped of their right to self-determination, to be free from violence, to enjoy a safe and satisfying sex life. Some violations, such as rape, may be criminalized, but not always prosecuted. Other violations go unchallenged because they are reinforced by community norms, practices, and laws. The right to bodily autonomy is violated when a husband or a partner forces a woman to have an abortion or impregnates her against her will. Bodily autonomy is violated by practices like so-called corrective rape, so-called honor killings, and so-called virginity tests. And the list goes on and on. And what was bad has become worse now with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has further diminished, of course, a women's autonomy by increasing sexual violence, new barriers to healthcare, unplanned pregnancies, and job and education losses. Although there are many impediments to bodily autonomy, the report clearly shows that gender inequality is perhaps the most insidious and pervasive one. Gender unequal norms and attitudes lead to power imbalances in relationships that restrict women's decisions, particularly when it comes to sex and pregnancy, or that drive the expectation that women must defer to their husbands or partners in all aspects of their lives. Real, sustained progress, therefore, depends on uprooting gender inequality and all forms of discrimination, and transforming the social and economic structures that maintain them. In this, more men must become allies. Many more men should commit to stepping away from patterns of privilege and dominance that profoundly undercut bodily autonomy. While a bold goal, gender equality is also an internationally agreed one as the 5th Sustainable Development Goal and as the purpose of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action, the 25th anniversary of which we are observing actually this year. All countries can do and must do more to achieve gender equality, since no country is there yet. Governments have a lead role to play in reaching that goal by fulfilling their obligations under human rights treaties, such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Governments can alter the social, political, institutional, and economic structures that reinforce and thrive on gender unequal norms. The report might not have all the answers, and UNFPA might not have positions on all issues, but with this report, we at least raised the right questions, and we raised the level of uncomfortability. Because only by realizing autonomy will we realize a world of greater justice and human well-being, which in turn benefits us all. After all, as the report makes very clear, communities and countries can only flourish when all women have the power to make their own informed decisions about their bodies and their lives. And I truly hope that you will use this report and its findings in furthering the march towards bodily autonomy and integrity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. That was very inspiring and powerful introduction to this report. I also really like the invite and actually the call to action. I am happy that we also have people here from the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs that we will talk with later. So we will come back to this point later for sure. I'm just quickly looking at the panelists, if there are already people from our panelists that would like to ask a question, or I'm looking also at the Q&A. If not, I think I have a question just listening to your story. You mentioned quite some challenges, and I was just curious to hear a bit more from your position. Where do you personally think that at this moment is the biggest challenge, and the biggest focus should be on?
Thank you, Ada. Yes, obviously the heart of this violations of bodily autonomy is gender inequality, and everything that relates to that is, of course, the main challenge. And that means we have to do better and more and quicker and faster when it comes to creating a gender equal world in all its aspects. For us, of course, it means and remains to the focus on women and girls, and particularly girls and girls' education, girls' capacity and agency to make these decisions for themselves. It means supporting organizations and movements that drive and that challenges patriarchal societies, societies that are really, thrive on an unequal balance between men and women. And that's the main challenge. And of course, it's not new. The issue is not that we don't know what we need to do. The issue is that political will, enough political will to really make this happen. And for UNFPA, I think we raised this because I think we feel that also as an agency ourselves, we've done too much on, let's say, the supply side of the issue. As long as there's services and there's trained people. And actually, I think Nairobi, in that sense, 1.5 years ago was a turning point also for us. It's time to start looking at the root causes of these things, the institutions, the cultures, and the societies that keep these structures, these unequal structures in place. And so what you also see in our new strategic plan that we're working on, and the Dutch government is very involved in the new strategic plan, is us making a very bold statement around investing in changing these institutions and cultural norms and practices that hinder gender equality and the advancement of that. So I think with this report, I want to call the attention to the international community that it's not just supply. We have to get to the root of this, and the root really is, who owns your body? Who owns your body? And let's answer that question. And I think that's what we try to do. And of course, for UNAG, it's not always easy. Believe me, this report also will create a stir in some parts of the world because of the nature of that report. But we want to do it, and we think it's important to do it, and we will do whatever we can. But of course, we need many others, such as you, civil society, governments, to make this happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Arthur. And indeed, we need each other. I very much agree with it. And I see a hand up from Lisa, our Dutch youth ambassador. And I would really like to we have about a bit less than 2 minutes. So Lisa, would like to ask you to ask your question.
Perfect. I'll keep it short and sweet. And I'm super happy, Arthur, that you mentioned that gender equality is such a confounding and a big part of eradicating all these challenges that we see to bodily autonomy. I personally think that SRHR and bodily autonomy and gender equality are really so super interconnected, and we really can't see them differently. But gender equality is broader than just women's rights alone. And the report does talk a lot about women's rights and about girls. And I also hear a lot about, giving girls the tools. So I'm really interested to hear, how do you see a role for men and boys in that fight to obtaining bodily autonomy for all? Because bodily autonomy is also a men's issue, and it's also a broader issue than that. So I was wondering how you see that.
No, and I totally agree. And the report also mentions this, of course, that working on men and boys, or working on positive masculinity, is extremely important. And again, I'll come back to our own strategic plan, where actually positive masculinity and working with men and boys will be one of the main pathways for our new strategic plan. In other words, we're investing more in that, realizing that, of course, it cannot be done by only working on girls' agency and capacity, but we have to change societies, and that really starts with all of us. And I think the report also mentioned, I think, in many places, it's also about LGBTI. It's also about disabilities. It's a lot of other things that are part of this debate about, again, who owns your body. Also very much recognizing sexual orientation and gender identities that are different, but need to be protected and need to be respected in this case. Because if you talk about bodily autonomy, you talk about everyone and everyone's decision. So very much agree with you, and it's also, as I said, something that we highlight in the report, but also will highlight in our own work going forward.
All right, very. Thanks to both of you, Lisa and Arthur. I do have to stop you here because it's already time for our second speaker. And I'm very excited with our second speaker because that's Nelly Munyasya. And Nelly is the Executive Director of the Reproductive Health Network in Kenya. And the main strategic goal of the Reproductive Health Network in Kenya is to reduce maternal morbidity and mortality by focusing on increasing the access to safe abortion in Kenya. Nelly, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. And I have some questions for you. Let's dive right into it. First, I would really like to ask you, what does bodily autonomy mean for you, and specifically in your work in relation to abortion in Kenya?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you, Ida, thank you, UNFPA and Rutgers, for having me being part of this amazing panelists. I mean, as Arthur put it pretty much well, that bodily autonomy is an issue of choice. In 2019, the Kenya's female population amounted to approximately 26.45 million out of the 26 million, living in a patriarchal system that continued to deny women the chance and opportunity, to make critical decisions concerning their own body. For example, for women in marriage in Kenya, they do not have a chance to choose when they want to become pregnant and how many children they want to have. To an unfortunate extent, many of these women, suffer from continuous rape, where they do not have consented sex, and they are not aware of this violation. In many of our setups back in Kenya, and I think in Africa, women do not have voices. Women continue to suffer in silence because their husbands are the ones that make decisions. They are the ones that have the powers to make the decision on when to have sex, how to even have the sex, and even which contraceptive to use. Many of the women are even scared of carrying or taking condoms, from clinics or health facilities. And this, in our context, is regarded as being unfaithful to your husband, which might create a lot of trouble for a woman in the house. And in terms of what bodily autonomy means to the kind of services that we provide, which are abortion services in Kenya, it is sad that in Kenya, we still have 7 women and girls dying every day due to unsafe abortion. The lack of access to safe abortion services continue to lead, to this death. And this is because there's no access to information and services. This mostly affects pregnant adolescent girls who they choose to, this continue to affect the adolescent girls who, if they chose to keep the pregnancy, most often will not, be able to go back to school, and this is because of the stigma. This creates a dependency cycle where they are not able to get jobs and often ensure abuse just to get basic necessities. They end up, being dependent of the men or their partners for them to just access the basic necessities. So the lack of comprehensive sexuality education has also continued to inhibit girls' education, as they lack knowledge on or about their bodies, and also ways to prevent pregnancy. This is majorly due to inadequate information on abortion in our communities. And we've seen a lot of stigma, violence, religion, and culture that also continue to bar women from seeking safe abortion services. Many women continue to seek backstreet abortion services because of the fear of being labeled as murderers, despite the existing constitution very clear under what circumstances women and girls can access safe abortion services. And this is under Article 26(4) of the Kenyan Constitution. Only a handful of women are aware of this, and also their rights. So Kenya has numerous progressive abortion frameworks, like the standards and guidelines that help in the reduction of maternal mortalities and morbidities due to costs as a result of unsafe abortion. But we have not seen our government, just take the bold step of ensuring that this is being implemented. So bodily autonomy is very key to our work, because Kenyan women have a right, to be aware of the legality of abortion, and they also have a right to make uninformed choices concerning their own body. They are also able to hold the government accountable in ensuring that they implement the sexual health-related policies. When women are aware of their bodily autonomy right, they take up the task, stand up, and speak out for themselves and other women in the community, and also help with grassroots advocacy by just, dispelling the myths and misconceptions around abortion. Ida, sorry, that was really, just
No, sorry, Nelly. This is very powerful, and I also find it very inspiring to see how Reproductive Health Network is really contributing to this bodily autonomy of Kenyan women by actually working on like 3 pillars. On the one hand, you are talking really about education, making sure that women and girls and people in general are aware of their bodily autonomy rights. You're making sure that the services are there, that there is access to services. And you also talked a bit about law and policy. So that for me gives a real comprehensive overview of these different pillars that all relate to bodily autonomy. And in doing this work in Kenya, Nelly, I can imagine there's quite some opposition and challenges. Could you briefly share a bit more about some of the challenges you face in doing this work?
As an organization that is geared towards providing the comprehensive abortion services, we have continuously witnessed our providers being targeted by the opposition. We have seen them being harassed and arrested by the police. And this is because of them providing these so much needed services to the girls and women in the communities. And this, in a way has created tension amongst our healthcare providers, and some of them decide to opt out of the network. Some do not even report, do not give us the reports when they're providing these services. We have also witnessed attack by the opposition, both online and offline. At our office, we've gotten, strange calls of people calling in and threatening us and saying that we're providing abortion services. Just recently, we also saw one of the leading organizations among the opposition who launched a petition against our providers. One of our providers was singled out, and they asked the licensing body to withdraw his license. And they also had my photo and listed our organization as some of the organizations that are providing abortion services on demand. While in reality, we know very well that the Constitution is very clear under what circumstances safe abortion services can be provided.
Yeah. Wow, Nelly, so it must be tough. And I was actually also wondering how if you could share a bit more in how this is related to COVID-19 and all the developments last year.
So I think, like again, Arthur mentioned, COVID-19 has accelerated or, made it possible for a lot of cases around gender-based violence. We've seen and we saw a disruption in access to sexual and reproductive health by women and girls. Women being locked in houses with people who are perpetrators, of gender-based violence. And so the opposition, I think, also took advantage because organizations such as ourselves, we quickly, through the support of Rutgers, came together and see how could we make it possible for women and girls to access services. And we developed a hotline that was free, and the hotline was used by women and girls to access services. They could call in and talk to one of our staffs who provided counseling and would refer them to healthcare providers across the country to access services, or we could network with other organizations that handled cases to do with gender-based violence in terms of providing safe houses, and those ones that needed safe abortion methods, we could deliver the pills to the comfort of their homes, or we could refer them to even chemists or pharmacists that were very close to them. So in terms of COVID-19, I think it provided an enabling environment for women and girls to struggle in terms of accessing the so much needed services, especially abortion services.
Yeah. So it had quite a big impact, and I think the hotline you were referring to, the Nenana Binti initiative.
Yes,
yeah.
Nenana Binti, yes.
I want to have a quick look at the chat to see if we have questions or from the panelists. Oh, and I see that we have 2 minutes left, Nelly. So let's keep an eye on this. Looking at the chat. Yeah, I see a question from Eric specifically to Nelly. So this is a nice question. Eric is asking, has comprehensive sexuality education had an impact in increasing access to services among adolescent girls and young women in Kenya?
Thank you so much, Eric. In Kenya, comprehensive sexuality education has something that the opposition has really, had a field day on it and have not allowed organizations that work around CSE to effectively ensure that young girls, adolescents, and youth can access information. So in terms of if it has helped us to access services, I would say no, as we would have expected, because we've had challenges, we've had religious groups, we've had individual activists, the bigger group of the opposition just trying to make sure that we are not succeeding in ensuring that comprehensive sexuality education is provided to the adolescent and youth. And that's why for the past 2 years, and especially during COVID, we really saw an increase in teenage pregnancy. This tells you that there's a gap, that the girls, the adolescent and youth do not have the so much required information that they need. So we have not done as well as we should have done.
Yeah, no, that's also really an area to focus on together in partnerships, something to keep on working. Thanks, Nelly, for this. Our time is up, unfortunately. I feel we could continue discussing for a long time, but it's time to go to our second or next speaker. So thank you, Nelly. And I would like to introduce you all to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Angel Lama from Nepal. And Angel is a human rights advocate working for Blue Diamond Society in Nepal. And she is also Miss Pink Nepal 2018. And Angel was the first ever trans person on Miss Universe Nepal. Angel, welcome.
Thank you, Aira. Hello, everyone. Namaste.
Hi, Angel. So let's dive right into it. I also have a similar question that I just asked Nelly. I'm curious to hear from you, what does bodily autonomy means for you, and specifically in your work in Nepal?
Knowing and enjoying rights of your own body, specifically working in the rights for gender and sexual minorities, owning your sexuality and accepting your gender identity has to be the true meaning of bodily autonomy, according to me and the field that I'm working in.
Thanks, Angel. And could you talk a bit more about the challenges you are facing in your work?
So the main challenge that we are about to face is the current law, which is under discussion, which will state for a trans individual to have gender reassignment surgery certificate in order to get citizenship of Nepal, which would be, of course, a huge step backwards as we all are trying to move forward in the field of human rights and bodily autonomy, as the person won't be able to have their own rights on whether to have their sexual reassignment surgery or not. And I think that's the biggest drawback that we are about to face if the law passes. And we are working day and night to, oppose the law that's about to be passed. And of course, there are a lot of things such as not having much of HRT specialist for a transgender individual here in Nepal, which directly indirectly affects the bodily autonomy of people that are like for trans individual and LGBTIQ individual which are living in Nepal, I would say.
Thank you. And you said you are working day and night on trying to oppose the passing of this law. Could you explain a bit more, like what does this work mean? Like, what do you do day and night actually as an
it's basically, yeah, okay. So Ira, so it's basically about conducting different type of programs which like inviting the government bodies, which directly indirectly affects on passing the laws of Nepal, and also throughout the social media platforms, from Instagram, from Facebook, and from lives, from like inviting all the people from nationally, internationally joining forces together in order to voice what is right. So these are the few things that we have been working through, and also our NGO is actively working on having lobby meeting with different government bodies and different NGOs and international INGOs in order to oppose the law for now.
Yeah, and also similar question to you about COVID-19. How have you seen the past year? How has this influenced your topic and that you're working on in your work in Nepal?
Okay, so COVID-19 had a huge drawback. We had lots of like programs planned out, work plans planned out, like all messed up. But of course, there have been a lot of like, unfortunately, there has been 15 suicide cases of trans individual during this pandemic, which is very much saddening and disheartening in the context of Nepal, as the law states that the country which law is very progressive, due to this lack of implementation, there has been a lot of problems that we have been facing through, from getting relief packages to from getting citizenship that I just talked about, to you should have a sexual reassignment surgery in order to get a citizenship, which law is about to pass. So there have been a lot of things going on. Also on the brighter side, there have been a lot of like people who are opening out and more welcoming, as you mentioned earlier, Miss Universe Nepal pageant itself has been welcoming trans individual, and this thing is first time in history. Not like this is the first ever national pageant which has accepted trans individual as their participant, and I think we are working for better future for now. So we're still working on the field of the law that is about to maybe pass, opposing it, and also we are trying to have HRT classes, bringing on the specialist and giving knowledge and information about hormones to transgender individuals, and also helping LGBTIQ plus people by conducting many mental health awareness program through webinars and Zoom meeting calls.
No, that's really nice. Thanks for this. And I'm also happy that you mentioned that there, despite all the challenges, obviously also good things happening. do you see anywhere else like opportunities or positive shifts also in society happening around you besides Miss Nepal?
Yes, I think I would say before, like comparing these from now to before, like 10 years earlier, so it was quite harder for us to, like, join this international conference and talk openly about your sexuality or gender identity. And I think the people who have came before me, the activists who have came before me, has made this platform for me to speak here openly, owning my gender identity. And I think that's the biggest achievement that we have ever had in Nepal. As Nepal being itself a developing country, there are still like a lot of people who would, like, not aside with saying that you identify as a certain people, as a transgender or as a gay or a lesbian. And I think it's me being here and talking about my gender identity, talking about the LGBTQ rights here in Nepal is the biggest achievement that Nepal had till now, I would say.
Wow, thanks for that. And also thank you to all the other advocates and activists working on this and indeed together joining forces in creating these opportunities. I think I would like to have a quick look at the Q&A again, if that's all right with you, and see if either the participants or panelists have specific questions for Angel. Let me see. I think I actually do still have some questions that I would like to ask you. There's something else that unfortunately is a bit less positive, but that's in relation, it's very much linked to bodily autonomy and increased violence towards trans persons. I was wondering if you could share or talk a bit more about that in relation in your case in Nepal and increased violence towards trans persons.
So I think we did had a case like past month ago about police brutality towards transgender people, and it was quite sad and heartbreaking to see that, because the law of Nepal states that you can't like um, have police brutality towards any humans, like just be it transgender individual, and seeing that was very disheartening. But also looking on the brighter side, there are a lot of people, even like the celebrities and the peoples who were like out in social media platforms were openly talking about how this was very wrong and how this should be solved. And we did also like write a letter to Human Rights Commission and to the police department, and they have taken the right step, according legally right steps to dissolve this. And I think this is something that we should still work on, I would say, and Nepal should work on. But I can see progress happening in few years, because I could see a lot of people who are like, talking about human rights and supporting not only generally about violence against only trans people or a certain individual. They are very much open and out and loud about, against violence, not only be transgender people, being all people, like around all people, basically humans, I would say. So yeah, that happened. So hopefully in near future, in 5 or 6 years, there won't be any trans related violence against transgender individual. But specifically speaking, that was the one time a month earlier. And also at that time, there were a lot of people who talked up against it and were very much, against the police and what they did. So the legal action has been taken, and hopefully in future this won't repeat again.
Yeah, let's hope for that. And a bit in relation to that, also maybe a personal question, because I can imagine that this can also sometimes be quite stressful. And I was just also wondering for other activists and advocates watching at home, what are your coping mechanisms, or how do you have tips on how to deal with stress in relation to this?
Against the violence that happens to transgender individual?
Yeah, and in general, just the coping mechanisms of dealing with opposition or having to deal with all this sometimes negativity and difficulties that this work of you comes with.
I think it's you have to know, the rights that you have, because you should enjoy the right that has been given by the government. And in order to enjoy the rights that you have, you should know the right. And I think you should know the rights that you have, the rights where you can speak, the rights where you can put your voice out, and always support what's right, and always see each and everyone as an equal human being rather than judging them with their sexuality or different gender identity, I would say. And that would, yeah, basically help to cope with this kind of stuff. I mean, seeing each and everyone as a human and being a little more sensitive.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. I actually see a very nice question in the Q&A for you, and it's from Avi, and we only have about 1 minute left, so I'm going to do this very short. What support could the international community give to the trans community in countries like Nepal? Avi is asking.
Yeah, a great question indeed. I think the great help will be conducting different type of webinars. Like, so what we need right now is we really need right now is specialists on hormones and other people joining forces and to letting know what's the basic human rights here in Nepal, like for the international people or the people here in Nepal are. So we can maybe create a group, create a webinar and talk about transgender people who are living in different sites, parts of like different countries, and we can talk our problems and maybe we can get solution from there too. And it's just, very great to know about you're not the only one who is going through this stuff. So it's if some people are in and people are together from different countries, then we can talk about what we are going through. And it's always great to know that there are other people on other side who are like you. And I think that would be a great help in itself, knowing each other and sharing what we have been gone through and what can be done in future. I hope that I answered your question.
You did very, very well. Thanks, Angel. It was really a pleasure. Thanks a lot again for your contributions. Our time is over. We have to go to the next speakers. So actually we went a bit to Kenya, we went to Nepal, and now it's time we are going back to the Netherlands, because I'm gonna invite Pascal Groothuis and Lisa de Pachter. Very pleased to have you here. Pascal is the Director of Social Development, and she's also the Ambassador for Women's Rights and Gender Equality at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands. And Lisa is the Dutch Youth Ambassador of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. Welcome, Pascal and Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Yeah, same for you. Let's dive right into it. I was wondering, I actually just want to ask you both for your reaction and your insights to this report, and also specifically, of course, coming with your point of view from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would like to hear more about that.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to work with UNFPA and to talk about this very important theme, and I'm very happy to be able to do this together with Lisa. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm really happy to join today's launch. And I think Arthur stated it really well. It's also a joint call to action. And I was touched by the contributions from Nelly and Angel, and they were really personal. And one thing that keeps going through my mind is that Angel said, it's really good to know that you're not by yourself. So it's difficult to give you a hug through here, but a big hug to Nelly and to Angel, and we're here with you. So I think what I took back from the two stories is that it's really important to be able to make informed choices, and that the still silenced voices are heard and also listened to. So it shows for me, again, how much our attention and investment, but also our concrete actions in sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, and rights of LGBTIQ persons is so needed. And today, it's really good to have the launch of this very important and very timely report. And I want to congratulate UNFPA as well. So a big congrats to Arthur and his team for the State of the World Population Report, because it's really important to move the discussions about these rights forward. Bodily autonomy, the ability of a woman, a girl, a young person to make decisions about their own body is essential for a healthy and fulfilling life. It's about sexual and reproductive health rights. It's about gender equality. And it's, in fact, about a whole range of human rights. Looking at the report, it's kind of shocking, actually. And it's good to see all the numbers. But it's shocking as well that only half of the women around the world are able to take essential decisions about their own body. Something very simple, actually, about planning your fertility, when to have children, if to have children, by using contraceptives, or visiting a health worker or a health clinic for an STI test. And I found it also incredible that so many countries still have laws that allow perpetrators of rape to get away with it by marrying their victim. It shows that we have tremendous work to do. And also the whole situation of COVID that both Nelly and Angel described so very well as well. It's even a bigger reason for concern, because on top of the already shocking statistics, sexual and gender-based violence increased further, unplanned and teenage pregnancies increased, as well as maternal mortality, and also harmful practices like child, early, or forced marriage. And it's, in short, it's the hard-fought-for progress of the past decades is being reversed, and the lives of women and girls are on the line. There was a very recent report published by the World Economic Forum that said before COVID, it would take 99, almost 100 years to achieve gender equality. And now with COVID, it's 136 years. So it's more than a century that it will take before we have gender equality. And I think Arthur said it really well. I think that's the underlying root cause of all the issues we're talking about today. So we have so much work to do, and we actually have to accelerate tremendously. And then at the same time, and I don't want to be too pessimistic, but it is actually quite harsh reality, we are still in a major pushback against gender equality, sexual and reproductive health rights, and bodily autonomy. Also in Europe, in countries that are very close to us, but also in the UN. Pressure on the long-standing and agreed upon by many predecessors we have actually are now being fought for. And the new position of the US, that's much more progressive, fortunately, has easily been taken over by other countries. So it's not, oh, oops, sorry. Technical glitch.
There you are.
Technical glitch, sorry for that. So we really have to work hard to push back on the pushback and to push back on the gender inequality. And what I also really liked about Arthur's introduction is that we need men and boys and women and girls and everybody actually to stand up for the rights of all women and girls and young people, because we need to be able to make their own decisions and to let people love who they want to love. So we will use this report and the very valuable and shocking data to reinforce our arguments in our programs, in our bilateral meetings, but also in our multilateral diplomacy. Because together with all of you, I think, we will dream of a world of rights, choices, and autonomy, and where that's actually normal. So it's not a future dream, but it's like a normal reality. And we believe in practicing what we preach and to let the young people speak for themselves. So I'm really happy that Lisa is here, not only today, but actually it feels like always. So I'm very happy to give you the floor, because I think really, and I truly believe that, but only by meaningful participation of young people and listening, not only hearing, but listening to their voices, we can make a difference. So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Pascale. I think that's a perfect bridge into what I was planning to say to you all, because I think that some of the challenges that you faced and described as well as things that Angel and Arthur and Nelly already said. I really wanted to particularly draw your attention to young people as well as LGBTIQ persons. I mean, Angel mentioned that the biggest challenge to achieving full bodily autonomy in Nepal is owning her sexuality. And Arthur already said that reaching complete bodily autonomy for all really depends on eradicating all forms of discrimination, and especially gender equality. Because I really feel like when we talk about bodily autonomy, it is really critical to also talk about the intersectionality of all those characteristics and identity, right? Like between gender and age and sexual orientation and gender identity and so many other factors of discrimination. And that also comes into play when we're talking about the ability to say yes or no to sex or other things. Because bodily autonomy, if you ask me, isn't a single universal concept, it's a spectrum. And someone's ability to claim that autonomy differs with their identity and the different ways in which they face discrimination. For example, why I don't have full bodily autonomy simply for being a woman and a young woman at that, but I still live in an affluent country with accessible reproductive health services. My sexual identity is not threatened, and I'm also not discriminated based on my ethnicity. And those are all factors that make complete bodily autonomy closer in reach for me personally, but also so much more difficult for others to reach. And I think to make that a bit more concrete, I have some statistics that I wanted to add, which is that Human Rights Watch reports that 44% of lesbians and 61% of bisexual women experience rape, physical violence, or stalking, compared to 35% of straight women, right? And then if you add in the age factor, you can see that 48% of those lesbian women experience their first encounter with sexual violence between the ages of 11 and 17. I mean, that I just find that shocking. And then if you add ethnicity as well, you'll see that more than half, 53% of trans people of color will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. And these are just, yeah, like I said, shocking statistics to me. And they all show that with each additional characteristic and identity, your claim on bodily autonomy just diminishes. And you'll see as well that the SWAP report speaks about corrective rape and conversion therapy. And those are all practices that are used to attack sexual orientations and gender identities that do not conform to the heteronormative social and cultural norms that dominate our patriarchal societies. And I can only amplify the mandate of the independent expert on SOGI, Victor Madrugal, I think, that these practices are human rights violations. They're violations of the right to self-determination and bodily autonomy. And the SWAP also speaks about young people, and particularly adolescents, who are often denied access to health services and contraception and comprehensive sexuality education just because of their age and just because their society and the people surrounding them don't deem those things that they might need and that they might have autonomy over. And then when a young person finds the courage to go to a clinic for contraception or for an HIV test, they may even be turned away, too young, not married, or the health worker violates their right to privacy. And those are all violations to their right to bodily autonomy. So I am really happy that the focus of this report is bodily autonomy. I think it's very timely and very urgent. But let's also not forget that it's also a priority at the Action Coalition, SRHR, and Bodily Autonomy for the Generation Equality Forum. So finally, we have a much broader spectrum, a much broader focus on the right to bodily autonomy. And I really think that that allows us to look at SRHR and gender equality and the rights of LGBTIQ persons from an intersectional perspective. And I really think that we need to normalize the term intersectionality. We need to normalize a much needed intersectional perspective in the debate about gender equality and about SRHR and young people and of rights of LGBTIQ persons. And that also means, like Pascal has said, letting young people, everyone in diverse ways, to speak for themselves and influence these discussions. So I'm pretty happy that today at this event, we have quite a good balance in age and gender, ethnicity. And I think it has really helped our discussion and really showed us insights into the violation of bodily autonomy in different contexts. And that's also why I really want to call on you for a commitment, because our commitments can only be durable if we account for all intersecting restrictions. So I want you to really be critical of the intersectionality. And I ask that to the panelists here, but also all the people that are watching this right now, and speak up about it. How is the age balance on a next panel like this one? Did you account for the restrictions that people of varying sexual orientations face? Do women have equal speaking time? So I think that call on you is make meaningful involvement of all people, and especially of young people with intersecting identities, your top priority. stick a note with the word on your computer screen if you have to. I know that there's nothing that we see as much these days as our computer screens. Because we've already committed to leaving no one behind and reaching the furthest behind, but that especially applies to achieving bodily autonomy for all, and especially for young people. Thanks. That was
Wow. Thanks, Lisa. Well, really, really thank you for these inspiring words. And I love this little call to action to everyone. Let's all place the word intersectionality on our laptop screens so we don't forget about this. Thanks, Lisa. I want to ask, you briefly mentioned the Generation Equality Forum. And I just wanted to ask Pascal actually about what type of commitments is the Netherlands going to make there in terms of bodily autonomy? Because I know that it's going to be an important topic, bodily autonomy. Can you just very briefly explain what the Generation Equality Forum is and what the Netherlands is committing to there?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And Lisa, just help me out with this one as well. Now, it's really important. We just had the two meetings, right? You have the Mexico one and you have the Paris one. In Mexico, it was kind of the launch of the coalitions, and we were together with other partners leading on feminist movements, because it's really important to fund women's organizations in the South. We really believe in Southern leadership to bring the issues forward and to have a very equal representation at the table, as Lisa mentioned as well. Actually, currently, we're in the middle to prepare for Paris and to make our pledges and to make our contributions. And for us, it's really important also to look at other ministries. So it's not only something of development cooperation, but it's also something of the Dutch government that works on emancipation. So I can't give you all the details yet because we don't have the numbers yet, but it's something that we are very busy with for the next 3 months. And we try to be as ambitious and courageous as possible. So watch this space, I would say, but we're not in the definitive space yet. Lisa, and Lisa is of course in the team to prepare for this. So do you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's also good to mention that of course, we have the GEF coming and we have Paris coming, and we're ready to make some real commitments. And SRHR and bodily autonomy are also part of our commitment to feminist movements, right? I think they're very interlinked. And also, the Netherlands are an activist when it comes to SRHR and bodily autonomy anyway. We really do try to put it in every single aspect of our work. So I really think that, when you look at Dutch commitments to gender equality, there's always going to be an SRHR and bodily autonomy factor in there. So there's no doubt that that'll be a huge priority for us as we move forward to Paris. Great.
I'm happy to hear this. And Lisa, with you on board, I'm sure this will be for sure taken up. So that's it's great to know. We are actually, we have to close this section. We're, I think, running a bit over time. So I'm also asking the people at home to stay with us a little longer. Thanks again to Pascal and Lisa. This was very interesting and inspiring. Now I actually would like to hand over to Ton Koene. And Ton Koene is the director of Rutgers. And I would like to give him the floor for some closing remarks. So Ton, over to you.
Well, thank you, Aida. And let me start off by thanking all the panelists that contributed to this seminar today. First of all, Nelly, of course, an angel. I think it's been very impressive, the experiences that you've shared, but also Pascal and Lisa from the ministry, and of course, Arthur from UNFPA. Thank you all for basically describing what's going on and the huge problems we're facing. Because that is then also the question that is now on the table. What do we need to do? And I think that question could really be made much bigger, because it is, how do we create change? How do we create systemic change? Because what we've heard is that there is a lot of issues, that a lot of women, half of the women actually are not in the situation that they feel that they have autonomy over their body. But we've also heard the experiences from the LGBT community, where we see huge and similar issues. We've heard that during COVID, the problems actually have increased, and that is actually bringing us back steps and perhaps also years, 2 years ago, and we were already not in a very good situation. When I listened to Pascal, who described that instead of we needed to get to gender equality in 100 years, it is now actually 136 years. We cannot just go on as we have been doing so far, not even pre-COVID, but definitely not how the situation is now. So I think the big question is, and I don't have the answer personally, but I think the big question that it lies with all of us is how are we going to create this systemic change? What kind of revolutionary plan can we develop to create that change? And I would like to challenge UNFPA to take the lead on that. As a world leader in this area, I think it is your role also to take this on, not as a single party, totally not, because I think we all have a role to play, an important role to play. The governments, civil society, and basically all sectors in society, because gender equality is something that is in the veins of everything we do every day. So if we want to create that change, we need an ambitious plan, we need a big plan, and we need to have the funding that goes with it. So I think that that is a challenge that lies with us after this seminar, after all the information that we've heard that has been building up in the last, well, centuries actually, but also now being extra serious because of COVID. So let's take that challenge on and let's create a plan that we can really create systemic change. Thank you.
I really want to thank all the panelists and all the participants today. For me, this was a very interesting and inspiring session, and I hope you all experienced it the same way. I hope to see you all next year again. And I would like to ask my tech host to place the link in chat. And in this link, you can click to read more about the report and about the event of today. And this is also the page where the recording of today will be shared. So if you want to read more later, or if you want to watch this back, then you can do this on our Rutgers page. So thanks again, everyone. And yeah, have a good day. Hope to see you next year. Bye-bye.